hard turn to a passage that we're going to love. In those days, Peter stood up among the believers, a group numbering about 120, and said, "Brothers and sisters, the scripture had to be fulfilled in which the Holy Spirit spoke long ago through David concerning Judas, who served as guide for those who arrested Jesus. He was one of our number and shared in our ministry. With the payment he received for his wickedness, Judas bought a field. There he fell headlong. His body burst open, and all his intestines spilled out. Everyone in Jerusalem heard about this, so they called that field in their language Al-Qadama, that is, field of blood." Has anyone ever wrote that one on their mirror and tried to memorize it? Like, let's hang on to this one. If there's a passage that will guide my life, maybe a life passage, this may be it. It's interesting when we think about maybe even some of our contemporary bad guys, those that are portrayed in film and television, we can very quickly look at their lives and see them as villains. And there's not many whose life doesn't end tragically. It ends in a way in which, you can imagine them falling off the side of something into the depths. There's a way in which they're caught in war and you can see their life slowly end by the sword. Whatever it is, and we can look at it and we can see their life ending and feel a sense of justice. That they have gotten what was coming for them for a long time, that they deserve this. We can think about someone like Walter White in Breaking Bad. And we look at his life and how it unravels in so many ways. And really it just ends in moral ambiguity and some chaos of a gunfight. And that's about it. And what we look at and we say, man, all of his actions and choices led to that moment. And of course it ended that way. But then there can be this sense of compassion in it, can't there? Where we can look at his life, and from a cancer diagnosis to providing for his family, he started with such good intentions. But then over time, again and again and again, he started to portray that of a bad guy. We can think of other characters. When we look at the Marvel universe, we can think of Thanos. And for him, he's trying to seek peace and a place of shalom in the world. And the way in which he knows how to do that is through mass genocide. And those are the means in which he's going about. And so when his life comes to an end, we say, well, yeah, you cannot continue to do evil and expect good things. But then we can have this weird compassion for even this drawn up character on a screen that's not even real and think, man, could he have chosen another way? We see these moments in which it's like, no, hold on. Like you can do something different. And these missed moments over and over again, while it helps us see them as villains and other than ourselves and separate from ourselves, oftentimes it's the same thing that draws us in. And I would argue and offer to us in this little short 3-week series, Cautionary Tales, good lessons from bad guys, that a part of this compassion is that you and I see something in them that's actually in ourselves. There's something about their life, there's something about the things that they're doing that they're actually not as different than us as maybe we would hope. There's a quote that says that all good and evil runs through the human heart. Meaning every mass atrocity, every bad thing that we see around us or in us and whatever it is, it ran through someone else's heart just like our heart. And what we can actually do is we can look at these figures, we can look at the tales, we can look at these bad guys, and if we hold them in front of us, we might actually be able to learn something about ourselves. Rather than just distancing ourselves from them, thinking that I could never become that, we could actually hold them as a mirror in front of us to learn more about ourselves, so that you and I can be transformed. So that you and I can become more good and kind and patient and loving and caring and grace-filled and non-anxious. That we can actually be people who are affecting change in our world just by changing ourselves. That we're actually opening up ourselves to the dark crevices in our heart that hide the things that we might be embarrassed about or even ashamed about. And then we can expose them. And so we want to do that today with Judas Iscariot, who we now know how his life ended. And there might be something in his tale, even though we look at him as, if you've read the scriptures or familiar or new to them, you might even be familiar with him, as the one who betrayed Jesus. The one who handed Jesus over for 30 pieces of silver. That would have been about only 4 months of wages in that time for a blue-collar worker. It goes something like this. Actually, I want to say this before we read him. I'm going to keep this in front of us each week. That your deepest character flaws don't have to define you, but you can allow them to refine you. So the idea is that you and I have character flaws inside of us. We have those things that we're embarrassed about, maybe even ashamed about, the things that are just off inside of us that we don't fully know what to do. And oftentimes the tendency is for us to suppress them, to push them down, to keep them from other people because we don't want other people to know about them. But what we can actually do in the life with Jesus is hold them in front so that it can actually change us, so it can actually transform us. It's an opportunity to hold things to Jesus, for him to rewrite who we get to become over this time. So here's the image. Judas Iscariot, I'm going to read the passage. The image is going to stay on the screen, and you can just imagine the scene. Jesus had been off praying. His disciples, some of those closest to him, were having trouble staying awake as he was praying, and he wanted them to be praying with him. And so he keeps kind of going back and forth, and then it picks up here. He returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let's go. Here comes my betrayer." While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd armed with swords and clubs, sent from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man. Arrest him." Going at once to Jesus, Judas said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and kissed him. Jesus replied, "Do what you came for, friend." Then the men stepped forward, seized Jesus, and arrested him. With that, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword, drew it out, and struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him. "For all who draw the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I cannot call on my Father, and he will at once put at my disposal more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way?" So this is the culmination of Judas over time being one of the closest people to Jesus, being one of the 12 disciples, eventually getting to a point where he walks in front of the group of leaders to point out who is to be captured, to completely betray Jesus. And Jesus' little words there, "Go ahead and do what you've come to do, friend." This foreknowledge, as he actually knew what was going to happen. He saw this coming from moments before. Now, we're never told at what point Jesus knew this was going to happen, but we can look at this and we can see Judas as a betrayer. We can see him as someone who will put out someone else in his life for 30 pieces of silver. We can see him go to a completely separate group of people that wants to harm someone and sell himself to them for the sake of gaining something at someone else's demise. So at what point does this start? Did Judas just wake up one morning and say, "All right, here's the time, I'm going to go betray Jesus"? Do we wake up one morning and just say, "I'm going to go and do this thing. I'm going to go and betray. I'm going to go and be deceitful. I'm going to go and be dishonest. I'm going to go," and whatever it is? Do we just wake up one morning and just choose bad? Did Walter White just wake up one morning and choose bad? Did Thanos just wake up one morning and choose bad? Or are there series of events that are leading up in our lives, and there's moments in which we can choose to either suppress something or to actually allow it to change us, to be brought into the light so that you and I could change? It's interesting if we think about back in earlier in Jesus' life, actually, John, one of the closest to them, put it this way. There was a moment in which Jesus was at the home of a friend, Lazarus, and they are having dinner together, and Martha goes and she starts to wipe Jesus' feet with perfume and washes his feet. And in that moment, one of the disciples, Judas Iscariot, who was later to betray him, objected. Why wasn't this perfume sold and the money given to the poor? It was worth a year's wages. He did not say this because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. As keeper of the money bag, he used to help himself to what was put into it. See, even before this moment of betrayal, you start to see who Judas was. This entire time, as he was the money holder for the disciples in their ministry, he was dipping his hand in it also and helping himself. It seems that we could look at Judas and say that he was greedy, that whatever was in front of him, he could grab and take for himself. It goes even deeper. Matthew puts it this way. Then one of the 12, the one called Judas Iscariot, went to chief priests and asks, "What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you?" It seems like there's actually something underneath the greed. We could think about greediness. We could think about dishonesty. We could think about these ways in which we see our characteristics being displayed. But what's actually underneath that? We see it right here in Judas's words. What are you willing to give me if I deliver him over to you? So they counted out for him 30 pieces of silver. From then on, Judas watched for an opportunity to hand him over. What Judas is saying is, what's in it for me? Judas's primary question seems to be underneath the greed, underneath the betrayal, is what's in it for me? It seems that in his life as a disciple, in his life with Jesus, he actually could be using Jesus as a means to an end. I wonder what ways you and I, this last week, this last month, this week to come, what parts of our life are we asking, what's in it for me? What are the ways in which we inhabit daily life? And our starting point and maybe even our end point is what's in it for me? Sometimes a sign of this is, what might you be most frustrated by right now? Who might you be most frustrated by right now? And we can look at our jobs and we can see it all as a means to an end. Well, I'm just here to be successful. I'm just here to get a paycheck. I'm just here to provide for my family, like a Walter White. These things can be justified over and over again, but then what starts to happen is maybe we start to try to compete with other employees in our company in weird ways because I'm here for myself. You can think about maybe some of the close relationships that you have, your friends, your roommates, your spouse, your dating relationship. Like when things get pretty wonky, it's very quickly when you feel like you're not getting what you want out of it. One of the things I get to do is weddings, and one of the things I often say on a little bit of the pre-speech is that marriage will get most wonky when we stop asking what are we to give and we start asking what are we to receive. Meaning that marriage works best when we're both showing up with the commitment that we're here to give something. And it's not isolated in marriage, it's also this idea of church. That if we're always asking the question of what am I getting out of this, at some point we'll realize we're not getting much and we'll be frustrated and it will end. But if we show up with a posture to say, man, what can I give? What can I give away? What can I offer to others? There's something that comes in return to us. Maybe it's the way in which we interact with social media, wondering what can I get out of this? And is it the affirmation of likes? Is it receiving approval of other people? Maybe it's the way in which we view our politics. And the way we relate to our politics is that I have a certain belief, and in that belief, I'll start to conform and twist other things so that I can feel like I'm on the right side of history, because I want to make sure that I'm getting something out of this. And we also do this with faith. We do this with Jesus. We do this with church. We do this with attendance. Maybe some of our biggest frustrations with God is because he didn't do the thing that we wanted him to do, meaning we're asking the question, what am I getting out of this? What's in it for me? And what's interesting is most times I've been frustrated with God is he never actually said he was going to do the things I'm frustrated with him about. He never actually said, I'm going to give you all the things that you want. He never actually said you're going to have health and prosperity and wealth. He never actually said you're always going to be in comfort and things are going to go your way. He never actually said everyone else is going to see the world the same way that you see it. I mean, we can keep going on over and over and over, but the change is when I stop asking, what can I give? And I start asking, what's in it for me? What am I getting out of this? See, Judas Iscariot wasn't alone in the ways in which he viewed Jesus. A lot of people were frustrated with Jesus because they saw someone who's to come and to conquer the Roman government and to restore Israel to power. And he was failing at that miserably. And they leaned on the Old Testament and could read it through that lens and think that there is a conquering king coming to set Israel back atop. But then he also had ways of viewing the politics. Like he had his own politic in certain ways that said that this means now that Jesus should not be concerned about the poor when this perfume is poured out. Why is Jesus telling me that this doesn't matter? He should like be going and conquering something right now. And so Judas, again, at the center is what's in this for me? I thought I was following a conquering king that was going to fix everything. And he was going to deliver us and put us back into power. So I wonder for you this morning, where might you be asking what's in it for me? Where are you most susceptible to ask that in your life? Work, relationships, faith, politics. What are the behaviors where you tend to just get so frustrated with other things because it doesn't seem like things are going your way? It's interesting. There's an image of the Last Supper that Leonardo da Vinci gives us. And I think it's on there. Yeah. We can wipe this out of our brains here in a second because this isn't like historically accurate. They wouldn't have been sitting at a large table like this. They actually would have been like laying down around a table and leaning on each other and things like that. But it is helpful in a way. Like if you were to look at this, which one do you think Judas is? I know you can't pick out every little detail from where you sit, but you look at each one, I'm like, I could see it being the second guy in from the right who seems to be kind of like, man, you know it's not me, right? Like it can't be. And there's other guys they're kind of pointing fingers and trying to do the blame game and saying, oh, it's definitely that one. Like, you guys remember when he said that thing a few weeks ago? Like he has to be sure, because what they're responding to right now is these words of Jesus. He goes on to say that he loves them, that they are saved, that they will have life with him. And then he says, I'm not referring to all of you. I know those I have chosen, but this is to fulfill the passage of Scripture. He who shared my bread has turned against me. I'm telling you now before it happens that when it does happen, you will believe that I am who I am. Very truly, I tell you, whoever accepts anyone I send accepts me. And whoever accepts me accepts the one who sent me. He's talking there about the Holy Spirit that he'll offer and then his Father that sent him. After he said this, Jesus was troubled in spirit and testified, very truly, I tell you, one of you is going to betray me. The disciples stared at one another at a loss to know which of them he meant. One of them, the disciple whom Jesus loved, was reclining next to him. Simon Peter motioned to this disciple and asked, ask him which one he means. I love that, like, he didn't want to ask. Hey, man, can you ask him who he's talking about? And then leaning back against Jesus, he asks him, Lord, who is it? And this is the chaos that erupts right after that, according to Da Vinci. Each one now in a conundrum, wondering if it's them. And many would say that John's writing here is offering to us to join in to the disciples to ask, is it us? Is it me that's the betrayer? And this is the moment in which we can hold a cautionary tale in front of us and wonder, in which ways is Judas Iscariot alive in me? In which ways, again, am I asking what's in it for me? In which ways might we be sitting around a table, and if we heard Jesus' teaching, he would be speaking directly to us? While we may not want it to be us, while we might want to point across the table and say, yeah, but they, in what ways might he be revealing something inside of us so that we have a chance at changing? You see, Jesus actually invites us from what's in it for me to who do you want me to be? I think about the times in my life that I regret the most. And in every single one of those instances, I never asked the question, God, who might you want me to be in this? Because I was living from a place of what's in it for me. The ways in which I have used other people for my own satisfaction or my own success. The ways in which I've tried to manipulate my relationship with God by earning second credits or certain credits as if I can kind of hold him to something later on. And I can say, remember when I did this for you, God, will you do this for me? The times in which I look back that my life has been filled with most chaos, I was not asking, who do you want me to be? And I wonder if the question of who do you want me to be is actually the way in which we resist what's in it for me. But what's crazy is the what's in it for me question is natural. This is the way you and I wake up. We lift our head off the pillow, and everything around us is pushing us towards a narrative that we're at the center and that we are to be asking, what's in it for me? Everything says you should have what you want, especially in the West where we have money and things and comfort. I mean, you go to certain parts of the world and it's much harder to ask what's in it for me because there's not much to actually experience. And so you and I have something to resist, and I would offer to you and I that the way to resist it is to actually ask the question more often of, God, who do you want me to be? If Judas asks the question, Jesus, who do you want me to be? I know what I want to do. I know what I'm leaning towards right now when I'm asking the question of what's in it for me. I'm going to get mine. But Jesus, can you help me pause real quick? And can I hear your voice say, who do you want me to be? So in what ways might Jesus be meeting you right now? What area of your life might be good just to pause right now and just say, man, I don't feel like I'm getting mine in this area. I feel like I'm being worked over. I feel like I'm losing end of this. I feel like I should get more respect. I feel like I should have more of this at this point. How could these other people have? And in the midst of that, what if we paused and just said, in spite of all that, Jesus, who do you want me to be? How do you want me to show up? How do you want me to posture? Because what's in it for me actually starts to negate Jesus' teachings. Like if we think about the ways in which he talked about forgiveness. I know I've said it before. I know you've said it before. Yeah, I know. I want to forgive them, but well, yeah, we should extend mercy, but we should like talk to our neighbors, but well, yeah, I know we could be like more giving with our money, but like the but is a what's in it for me question every single time. Because Jesus over and over again just taught to give freely. Your thoughts, your opinions, your resources, your time, your forgiveness, your mercy, your compassion. I mean, over and over and over again, if we took Jesus' teachings plainly, there's not much that we're actually supposed to gain back. The what's in it for me question falls pretty flat pretty quick because we actually see people ask Jesus that, and he shuts it down pretty quick. Have you not forgotten that you are here to serve? Have you not forgotten that you are here to love? Have you not forgotten that you are here to forgive? That every blessing you've received is so that you can be a blessing. Over and over and over again. I wonder if you and I becoming good, beautiful, whole people is changing from what's in it for me to the question of who do you want me to be? Because the reality is when we use others as a means to an end, we find the end. we find our end. We find the end at which Jesus is working things out. And Judas found this end. When Judas, who had betrayed him, saw that Jesus was condemned, he was seized with remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders. I have sinned, he said, for I have betrayed innocent blood. What is that to us? They replied. That's your responsibility. So Jesus threw the money into the temple and left. Then he went away and hanged himself. See, Judas does actually get to the point in which we all would desire to see every villain come to come and recognize the ways in which they've found the end, the ways in which their missteps have led to violence and chaos and death. In this moment for Judas, it was too late. And the leaders that were condemning Jesus essentially were like, whatever, dude. You thought we cared about you and all of this? We thought that you actually thought that we were on your side or something like that? No, we got everything we needed out of you. You got your tiny 30 pieces of silver. We don't know how you didn't ask for more. That's all it took. And he was so filled with the regret of his actions that he went and hanged himself. When we use others as a means to an end, we find the end. So what do we do? What do we do with this thing that might be inside of us? What do we do with the reality that you and I are bent towards using others and other things as a means to an end? That there's something that we can gain out of everything. I think Jesus does it at that same supper table in the upper room, right before he put them in a conversation around who's going to betray him. When he had finished washing their feet, mind you, Judas, the one who was about to betray him, Jesus washed his feet. He washed all of his disciples' feet before dinner, which would be common practice by a servant. A servant would wash their feet. Unlike you and I, they didn't have laces on their shoes and covered socks. They just walked around dirty all the time in sandals. And so it was proper to wash feet before. To imagine a conquering king wrapping his clothing around his waist, getting down on his knees, and washing their feet is something that they could not fathom was happening. Then to go one more length and say he's actually going to wash the feet of the person that he knows is about to betray him for 30 pieces of silver. He put his clothes back on and returned to his place. Do you understand what I've done for you? He asked them. You call me teacher and Lord, and rightly so, for that now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I have set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. Very truly, I tell you, no servant is greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent him. Now that you know these things, you will. We don't have online today, so it's okay if I don't get a mic. I'll just talk louder. Comcast is down in the entire area, apparently. But Jesus right there just gave us the answer. He modeled the answer. He showed us exactly what go and serve others. Will you not ask, what is in it for me, but will you ask, what can I give to others? How can I give these things away? My natural instinct in this is to say, look, but we don't have to be like a doormat for other people, right? We're not supposed to get walked over. But I'll be honest, as I look at the scriptures, it feels like we are to be a doormat in so many ways. which is very hard for me, as I can imagine for you. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not certain boundaries and very unhealthy, harmful relationships. That's very separate. But what if life with Jesus actually felt like losing often? What if it felt like I'm not getting my way more often than it feels like getting on my way? What if it feels like doing the things that I absolutely don't think I can do and in my power, but I can actually do them because I believe that Jesus' words here, now that you know these things, you will be blessed if you do them. Some of the most significant moments in my life that I can look back on and be proud of and thankful for, that have meant something and provided meaning in my life, is when I actually stopped to ask the question, who do you want me to be? And that's hard because it takes a very intentional pause to do this. So do you have a way of pausing from time to time to ask, who do you want me to be? Before just responding, before sending the text back, before cutting off the relationship, before trying to get one up on somebody. Do you have a way of pausing? Do you have spaces in your week for prayer where you might just sit and just offer the things going on in your life to God? Where you can admit your frustrations with things, where you can admit that things aren't going your way. And are you open to allow him to invite you to be something that you naturally don't want to be? And the encouragement for you and I think, is to become a means to an end that doesn't end at you. See, the whole means to an end isn't bad, but it's bad when it stops at you and I. But what if you and I have the invitation to be a means to an end that doesn't end with you and I? What if every opportunity that we have of something coming at us we don't want in our life is an offering of our life to something larger than ourselves? What if every thing that happens to us that is not right is an invitation to offer forgiveness? What if the things that we most desire to fill ourselves with meaning and purpose is a moment to pause and to check, God, but who do you want me to be? And maybe it's saying no to things that make the most sense. Maybe it's giving more things away than we tend to accumulate. What if we get to actually be a part of the greatest means in every single person's life because there's a greater end than just ourselves? That there's a larger story being played out that you and I cannot live on our own. And that you and I get to be images of that story by every act of mercy and compassion and goodness. And man, I tell you, every single time it feels like losing. It feels like losing. So I wonder this week, where can you go lose? Like seriously, what might you need to do from here that feels like a loss? Feels like you conceding? Feels like you giving them what they might want? Feels like being walked on a little bit. What's the thing that you can do this week to display the story of that God is working and redeeming and creating all things new? And it's through a people who are willing to be a means to an end that doesn't end at us. Why don't we stand together? I'm going to invite the worship team up.